Hello all. Today's video, I want to go over Anaxa a little bit. Of course, we've all seen the controversy around Cerydra of basically, she's kinda weak, right? Even in this very specific niche she was made for, she isn't all that much of an upgrade to even the general older supports. And it gives questions to her value for an account, right? Because as many people are aware, if they've played this game long enough, general support power creep is quite a real thing, and so there's nothing stopping Cereedra from being power crept by a general support in version 4 or near it, right? And specifically, even for Anoxa, who is the second best DPS in the game for taking advantage of Cerydra, Cerydra is not that much of an upgrade, right? Phanon gets around a 20 to 25% upgrade over Cerydra compared to Bronya. Over Bronya compared... Wait. You know what I'm saying, right? E0 Cereedra is 20 to 25% better than a Bronya. And so, for Anoxa, what the calcs show is that she is around 10% better, right? She is around 10 to 15% better if you want to highball it at E0 over Robin or Tribby. So the value for Anoxa is even less than it is for Phanon. And the reason Cereedra's value is taken into question with Anaxa is actually not the same reason as Phanon. A big reason why I and many people simply don't recommend pulling for Cereedra for Phanon is that Phanon has much better vertical investment into his Eidolons that far outpace the value that Cereedra can provide for him until you get him E2S1. It's only once you get him E2S1 where now it finally may be worth it to invest into Cereedra. However, Anoxa doesn't have this issue necessarily. He actually has the weakest vertical investment until you hit E4 and E6 for a main DPS in Amphoreus. However, there is a different reason for why it isn't recommended to pull someone as niche as Cereedra for Anoxa, especially when she's this little of a jump to his performance, is that Anoxa is the most versatile Amphoreus DPS in the game. And what I mean by this is that he can get very, very good use out of almost any support in the entirety of the game. He just loves crit stats, he loves attack, he likes frequent skill spamming, which action advancers would obviously help him with. He is the most general Amphoreus DPS, and so this means he is the one who can best take advantage of damn near all the supports the game has to offer. So, he is the most prone to having his teammates be power crept instead of necessarily himself, right? So the problem with Cereedra only being 10% better than a Robin shown by calcs is that Sirene is upcoming in 3.7. Now, why does this matter? It matters because Sirene is 99% chance going to be the first limited character in the game with true damage buffing in base kit. Okay, yes, Tribby technically has it, but behind her E1, she should be the first one to have true damage buffing in base kit, which is the strongest buff in the entirety of the game that any support can provide as of current, right? It is incredibly broken, it's unsaturated. The only other person who can provide this buff in base kit is RMC. So if you're not running Anoxa with RMC and you're instead running it with Sirene, let's say theoretically she has 40% true damage buff team wide, then this means that she would increase Anoxa's total damage output by 40%. True damage is very, very broken for this reason. It is a direct multiplier to increasing a character's overall damage output, right? However, alongside this, AoE supports usually don't have only one buff. They actually usually have two, right? You have Ruan Mei with Res Pen and as well as damage boost. You have Robin with her attack and damage boost as well. It's very common there's also Tribi with her Res Pen and vulnerability. AoE supports almost always have two different buffs instead of only one pure buff. So what's likely gonna happen is that Sirene in all likelihood will have something like Res Pen plus true damage, or just whatever other buff alongside the true damage buff, right? So this all in of itself is already sounding incredibly broken, but there's actually something more. With a recent leak that we got from two reliable leakers, I believe Anon Leaks and I can't remember the other one's name, but they're both reliable, right? They specify that Sirene has a special extra buff for every single Chrysos heir, which means Anoxa is going to get a true damage buff, another second buff that's in her kit, and another special third buff for every single Chrysos heir, which will likely probably be attack related with Anaxa. And so what this means is Anoxa's best in slot team, at least with sustain, simply wouldn't have a place with Cereedra. This would almost guaranteed be stronger than Anoxa, especially if there was some type of action advance as well in her kit at play. And so you would run Danheng SP, Sirene, Sunday, and as well as Anaxa, and this would be his best in slot sustain team, right? So this is why I tell people, you know, it's a bit iffy on Cereedra value for Anoxa. I'm not saying by any means that she's guaranteed to be power crept. However, I'm saying it's quite likely that in an Anoxa comp, they simply did not intend Cereedra to be a best in slot for Anoxa, but instead only for Phanon. So I just would not be surprised in the slightest if this were to be something that ended up happening and Cereedra instantly wasn't best in slot for him any longer, right? What would I recommend to most people? I'd recommend simply waiting until Anoxa's banner. The reason for this being is Anoxa is confirmed for a rerun as the second phase for 3.6. And why this matters is that even though you're skipping Cereedra guaranteed, once a character originally comes out, especially a support, they'll usually rerun 3 or 4 patches later. Plus, because she's such a small upgrade over Robin or Tribi, around 10% for Anoxa, you can just get Anoxa's Lycone or even his own weak Eidolon investment, in all honesty. And what will happen is that it will be more worth it and increase your team's DPS more if you already have a Robin or Tribi for him compared to pulling Cereedra, right? However, even if you don't want to do this, which I'll now go into, Sirene is in 3.7, which means her beta will completely finish during 3.6. So it's at this point where you can completely see the value Sirene has for Anoxa. If it isn't good, you can either decide to invest further into Anoxa's own vertical investment or simply wait for a Cereedra rerun, likely in 3.8 or 4.0. Right, so basically all I'm saying in this video is be a little, cautious if you're pulling Cereedra specifically only for your Anoxa because of Sirene on the horizon, and that these are the steps I'd take to maximize, the value you get out of your Anoxa, and you don't accidentally fall into bait. Right, because there is a very, very good chance that Cereedra could be bait for Anoxa mains, and people don't even realize it because they can't see Sirene's beta during 3.5. Right, that's all. Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Be careful with your pulls out here. It is Honkai Support Rail, and peace out.